My family saw me as a disappointment, so I walked out. Now, they're begging me back. My life has become a twisted spectacle, and this is the story of how everything I thought I knew turned into a drama I never saw coming. The scars run deep, etched by years of feeling second best, a shadow cast by my sister's unbearable shine. Always the black sheep, forever failing to measure up in my family. 25 if I watched my older sister, Emma 28, bask in the golden glow of parental approval. It was a script written long before I had a say, my parents, and particularly our mother, placing her on a pedestal so high I could barely see the top. From the moment we were children, she was the star, and I was simply the understudy who never got to perform. Growing up was a constant, agonizing comparison. Emma, the perfect student, the popular girl, the cheerleading captain, the prom queen. Me, I was the one who struggled in school, had a small circle of friends, and found solace in the art room, a sanctuary far removed from the relentless social whirlwind. Why can't you be more like Emma? A question that echoed in my head far too often. They lauded her achievements, barely acknowledging mine. A B on an exam became an inquisition, while Emma's S warranted celebratory feasts. This pattern relentlessly continued into adulthood. Emma, the Ivy League scholar on a full ride, was praised as if she'd personally cured world hunger. My decision to pursue art school, they questioned it incessantly, a chorus of doubt wondering aloud if I could ever possibly make a living as an artist. I remember the dinner where I finally mustered the courage to announce my college choice. Weeks I had spent agonizing, rehearsing the words, bracing for impact. When I finally spoke, my father's face crumpled, and my mother looked as if I had sucker punched her right in the gut. Are you sure that's a good idea? Emma chimed in, her voice dripping with thinly veiled concern. Art school isn't exactly known for job security. My parents practically nodded in unison, their disappointment palpable. Despite their blatant disapproval, I stubbornly clung to my dream. Those 4 years were a revelation, a haven where I felt like I finally belonged, surrounded by people who understood and valued creativity. I excelled, making the dean's list multiple times. But sharing those achievements with my family? They were met with a lukewarm "that's nice, dear," before my mother immediately pivoted to Emma's latest accomplishment. Emma, who had landed a high-paying position at a prestigious law firm right after graduation. Me, I was scraping by, juggling part-time jobs while desperately trying to establish myself as a freelance illustrator. Of course, my parents were riveted by every detail of Emma's cases and advancements, but seemingly allergic to any mention of my work. I recall a particularly brutal family dinner about 6 months after graduation. Emma was visiting, and my parents had prepared her favorite dish, practically rolling out the red carpet. The entire conversation revolved around her recent courtroom victories, my mother practically gushing with pride, my father beaming. When I dared to mention a small illustration job I'd landed with a local magazine, she cut me off mid-sentence to grill Emma about her plans to buy an apartment. The atmosphere at home had become toxic. I was still living with my parents to save money, but the constant comparisons and insidious criticism were tearing me apart mentally. Emma, meanwhile, was living in her own apartment in the city, an apartment lavishly subsidized by our parents, because of course she was. Every visit felt like a royal procession, days spent preparing, cleaning, and catering to her every whim. She was greeted with hugs and fanfare, while my presence was often treated as an afterthought, an irritating inconvenience. I tried, repeatedly, to explain how I felt, but it always backfired. I was accused of jealousy, of being overly sensitive. We just want what's best for you, they'd say, which always sounded like we want you to be more like Emma. The endless comparisons seeped into every corner of my life. I began to question my abilities, my decisions, my very worth. Some days, I couldn't even get out of bed, paralyzed by feelings of inadequacy and failure. I started withdrawing from my friends, ashamed of my lack of success compared to my sister. Even my romantic relationships weren't immune to their judgment. My parents were unimpressed when I brought home my first serious boyfriend in college, subjecting him to a relentless interrogation about his future prospects. When Emma introduced her boyfriend, a law student from a wealthy family, my parents practically laid down the red carpet. It all finally exploded last week. I had finally landed a substantial illustration commission for a children's book series. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a huge step forward for me professionally. I was actually looking forward to sharing the news at dinner. Of course, as usual, the conversation centered on Emma's latest triumphs. She had recently won a major case and was being considered for a promotion. My parents were practically bursting with pride. Finally, during a lull in the conversation, I seized my chance. I told them about my illustration project, trying not to sound too excited. My mother's response: "That's nice, dear, but don't you think it's time you got a real job? You're not getting any younger." My father just nodded in agreement. I was devastated. I tried to explain that this was a legitimate opportunity, that it could lead to bigger things, but they wouldn't listen. Emma, naturally, stepped in, suggesting she could definitely find me an entry-level position at her law firm if I wanted stability. That was it. The final, soul-crushing straw. I rose from my chair, the scraping sound echoing in the suddenly silent room. I told them I was tired of being treated like a disappointment, that I was proud of my work, and that I couldn't live in a house where I was constantly made to feel inferior. My parents looked stunned. My mother started to say something about me being overly sensitive again, but I cut her off. I told them I was moving out. I'd rather struggle on my own than endure their incessant criticism. My parents and Emma followed me, trying to talk me out of it, but their words only confirmed what I already knew. They saw me as a failure. My mother even had the audacity to say, "If you leave now, don't expect us to help you when you can't make rent." As I threw clothes into a suitcase, memories flooded back. My parents skipping my local art competition win because it coincided with Emma's debating match. The countless times they introduced Emma as our daughter, the lawyer, and me as simply our other daughter. The look of disappointment when I chose art school over the business program they desperately wanted me to pursue. That night, I drove away with whatever I could cram into my car. Looking back, I saw my parents and Emma standing in the doorway. My mother was crying, my father looked furious, and Emma just smirked. I was a cocktail of emotions, sadness, rage, and fear. But beneath it all, a strange sense of relief. I'm currently crashing at a friend's place, trying to figure out my next move. Leaving was a desperate gamble, but I couldn't take it anymore. Am I overreacting? Should I have stayed and tried harder to make them understand? Or was walking away the right decision? I feel lost and alone, but also liberated. The thought of building a life on my own terms is both exhilarating and terrifying. I'm worried about money, but I'm also excited to pursue my art without the constant judgment. Update 1. It's been over 2 months since I walked out, and a lot has happened. I wanted to update you all and thank you for all your support and advice. Those words have been a lifeline during this tough time. I had spent a week sleeping on a friend's couch and searched for a more permanent situation. Eventually, I found a small studio apartment that was affordable with my savings and illustration project money. Although it's not much, it is mine, and it is the first time I have my own space. I threw myself into my work over the first few weeks and was determined to show myself that I could make it on my own. Besides my illustrating work, I also took on a job at a local coffee shop. It felt great to be self-sufficient, but I was constantly wondering whether I made the right decision. Then there was a voice, similar to my mother's voice, telling me that I was believing I could make it as an artist. But then I'd work on my illustrations and that would help me recall that I was pursuing my passion. I got a lot of calls from my parents, but I wasn't ready to talk to them. I needed time to focus on myself and them to understand things on their own. The messages were either angry or sad. Emma was constantly calling with that same old tone telling me that I was acting childish and should apologize to my parents and go back home. After a month after I left, something unexpected happened. I was released and received positive reactions for illustrating a children's book. The author shared the book on social media, and it caught the attention of several parenting bloggers. Suddenly, I started receiving messages from different publishers interested in my illustrations. As I read the emails, I couldn't believe what was happening, and I realized that my dreams were more than just dreams. I cried that night, not out of sadness but with relief and happiness. Soon after, I got to more book deals. Although it was easy, it was enough to allow me to quit the coffee shop and do illustrating work full-time. It felt great to see my career taking off. With this newfound achievement, I was able to believe in myself more than ever before. I realized that I didn't need my family's approval to accept my worth and legitimacy. Emma came to my apartment unexpectedly during this time, and she mentioned that she was concerned about me and that our parents were furious. I invited her in, more out of respect than anything else. She seemed interested in how I was doing and inquired about my job. When I showed her the book and told her about my new projects, I was left to wonder if she finally viewed me as something. Then she started to use the same rhetoric. She then mentioned how scared our parents were and that they only wanted the best for me, then suggested that she could get me a job at her law firm. I felt a sense of inadequacy seeping through. However, I knew that things were different this time, and I saw myself looking at my work on the desk and remembered the emails from the publishers that I received. I lost my patience. I told her everything was okay, and that I was more happy than ever before. Then I mentioned that, for once, I was reliant on my own efforts. I then questioned her and asked if she could say the same thing, considering that our parents were paying for everything. Emma's face shifted, and the concern washed away and turned into the arrogant grin that I saw the night I left. She then went on to call me ungrateful and selfish. She also told me that I was breaking our parents' hearts and that I should be ashamed. I told her to leave. She mentioned not to come crying to them when my art phase fails and that they won't be there to help me out. I felt scared and empowered when she left. I realized that I no longer needed their approval. I was succeeding on my own, and I was doing what I like, and that was enough. Emma's actions prompted me to reflect on the friendship that we had over the years. I remembered how close we were as kids and I felt a sense of grief for the sisterhood that we had lost, but I also knew that I couldn't keep romanticizing our relationship. Then, a few weeks later, I started connecting with more artists and formed a network of like-minded people. For the first time, I felt a sense of belonging to a group that valued and understood me. I also started going to therapy to work through some emotional baggage. It has been difficult, but it has helped me realize that I am more than what my family expects and the professional things that I've done. I'm still not ready to speak to my parents, but I feel a lot stronger. I am focused on my work and am creating a life that makes me happy. It's not always easy, but it is worth it. I miss my family sometimes, even though I doubt myself still, but I then see everything I've been able to accomplish in the last 2 months, and it makes me so proud. I learned that I didn't need anyone cheering me on but myself, and it makes me want to celebrate my wins without depending on others. Thank you, again, for your constant support. It means so much to me. Please know that you are not alone if you are going through something similar. It's okay to choose yourself, pursue your passion, and define what success means for you. Update 2. It's been a year since my previous update, and I can't believe how much has changed. I want to let you know about what happened, and thank you all for the support along the way. My illustrating career has taken off. The children's book series that I worked on was pretty successful, and I've been illustrating several other volumes. I've also been commissioned for magazine covers and a few advertising campaigns. It has been hard, but I enjoy it all. About 6 months ago, I moved into a bigger apartment that has room for my own studio. I found that my mental health and productivity has increased being able to separate my living space with my studio. The day that I moved in, I stood in the center of the room with all the paints and blank canvases, and felt a sense of hope and opportunity. My confidence increased with my career, and I was asked to speak about careers and illustrations at several schools and started mentoring some young artists. It feels weird being able to inspire others when it felt like I couldn't make my own decisions. Now to my family dynamic. My mother called me a few months after my last post. She cried and asked if we could meet. I was skeptical but eventually agreed to meet her for coffee. My therapist suggested setting boundaries and working towards my relationship with my family, so I took this opportunity to start that. She appeared tired and angry when we met. She started off by apologizing for how they treated me. She also stated that they had time to think about their actions and realized how they had treated me unfairly and were constantly comparing me to Emma. It felt like everything I wanted to hear from them for years, but part of me was skeptical and wondered if they were trying to change me to conform to their expectations. She then revealed that Emma was fired from her law firm. Apparently, she was overcharging customers and misrepresenting her billing hours. I was shocked. The golden child, the perfect daughter, had fallen from grace. I felt a weird range of feelings, including surprise, perversity, and concern for my sister. Then, my mother revealed that Emma was living outside of her means and that she was evicted. She struggled to maintain expenses and racked up credit card debt when she lost her job. My parents attempted to help her, but it was bad, and they used a lot of their savings to attempt to support Emma. My mother then went on to say that they felt deceived and weren't sure what to do. It felt like all of the pressure was put on Emma, and I began to feel bad. She had to maintain being perfect and had to meet our parents' expectations all the time. My mother asked if I would consider coming home for dinner to discuss everything as a family. I felt conflicted, but I agreed, and I felt stronger and more capable of dealing with it. It was difficult to sit at the family dinner with Emma. She was not like the confident and polished lady that I recalled. She started lashing out, saying our parents didn't provide enough support, and that I had abandoned the family. I remained calm and firm. I told them about my accomplishments and that I established a life for myself without their help. Pride and remorse flashed across our parents' faces. Midway through dinner, Emma left. My parents felt defeated when she left, and they apologized again for how they treated me and mentioned they were proud of my accomplishments. Then they asked if I would consider coming home. While I appreciate their apology, I am not interested in returning. I created my own life and I am happy. I also mentioned that I'm willing to make our relationship better and spend more time with them. Things have been getting progressively better since that day. I speak to my parents often and they have visited my apartment. It feels great to have them genuinely listen to me and express how proud they are of my accomplishments. Emma, on the other hand, has cut off contact with all of us. She apparently moved somewhere else to start fresh. Although I try contacting her, she doesn't respond. I'm hoping that she is doing well and is discovering a path that doesn't feel like a burden to being the perfect child. This whole experience taught me so much. Family relationships, self-worth, and following your own path were some of the things that I learned. Being true to yourself is important and to be happy instead of wanting to meet other people's expectations. I also learned to forgive, and that it is not easy. I'm trying to forgive my parents and Emma for my sake. I learned that if I have hatred, then it will only hurt me in the long run. I'm still working on my relationship with my parents, and some habits still slip up sometimes, but they are respecting who I am and not who they wanted me to be. As for my career, I was asked to illustrate a comic novel, which is a dream come true. I'm also planning to teach a course at a nearby community college. Looking back over the last year, I'm shocked on how much has changed. I even thought I made the wrong decision on leaving and I now see that it was the best one because it forced me to stand on my own 2 feet and believe in myself. It is okay to fight for yourself, and to not feel less than you are. There is no way to know how things will go, and success can come in many shapes. Family dynamics are complex and it takes time to heal. Be patient, set boundaries and be willing to make up. Remember that you are worthy regardless of what others expect. I'm grateful for the support and encouragement along the way. Thank you for being there and for celebrating my wins. We need to heal hurts and make our own lives. Thank you again for the constant support. Looking back on everything, do you think I did the right thing by leaving when I did, or should I have handled things differently? Your thoughts and opinions on my choices would be greatly appreciated, and I am open to any feedback you might have based on everything I've shared.